Hey, welcome back to Brighter Rays. We are finishing up our study called It Is Not In Me from Genesis chapter 41, 1 through 37. And so we've seen Joseph's rise and fall, and then his rise and fall, and now he's starting to go up on a rise again. You know, he's in Pharaoh's presence. And we need to learn that God has a plan from this story, right? His plan is far more elaborate and extensive than we can even imagine. We can't comprehend the plan of God. It's beyond our understanding. We often get so absorbed in our lives that we forget that our lives are not about us. We exist for Jesus. That's what the Bible says. And our individual lives are about God redeeming a people for the Son. God is creating this bride. He's creating the church. He's creating this people unto himself. People that were not his people are now his people. And so when we look at Joseph's ups and downs, we see, we can easily place ourselves in the story, right? We can imagine yourself as Joseph and just, the emotions of your life. Starting from 17 till 30 years old, less than 15 years, just the crazy amount of change you've experienced in those years, just how much your life has changed. You can kind of put yourself in that position, and you can imagine what it must have been like to go through these dramatic life changes. I mean, it was pretty crazy. You think about it. I mean, at one moment you're in your father's house, you're the favorite of your father. Things are probably going well. Your brothers kind of, they don't like you. They kind of despise you, but you're still your dad's favorite. You're still living with him. You're still being blessed in his house. And then all of a sudden you are, sold into slavery, with these traders, and then you're into Egypt, into a completely different land from where you've ever been. And now you're a slave in an official's house. Okay. And then, I don't know his interaction with women before that, but now he's being pursued by a woman who is an adulterous woman. And, here he is in that situation, having to fight off those advances. It's crazy. And then all of a sudden he's thrown into jail. And then he's sitting in jail, and then he has this opportunity to befriend two officials of Pharaoh, and then God gives him interpretations of dreams, and all this stuff is happening, and then he sits in jail for 2 more years. He's still really the second in charge of the jail, but it's amazing to think about putting yourself in his life and just the ups and downs. And, there's a couple of years there where you're just kind of doing your thing, and then boom, all of a sudden, everything changes. So, but, going through these dramatic life changes, we have those too sometimes. I mean, if we took a stock of what's happened in our lives in the last, 13, 14 years, 15 years, what has changed? I'm imagining quite a bit for quite a few of us. And it's, with COVID and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of people that went through these dramatic life changes all at the same time. We've all gone through them. So things we didn't expect to happen, things that we didn't want to happen, it's an upheaval. But we also must remember that the reason that Joseph is going through all this is that Jesus was coming. That's why Joseph had to go through all these dramatic life changes. His life and the events that we read are all about Jesus coming into the world. That's why it's happening. How would the one that would crush the serpent's head come? How could that be possible? Well, Joseph was sold by his brothers into Egypt, and that led to a whole slew of events that led him to be ruler in Egypt, which saved his family, which then allowed Perez to grow up and have kids, and his son had a son, and his son has a son, and all the other events that occur to allow this line of people in the line of Judah to survive, go through all those stories. And, the one with Athaliah and her trying to kill all the line of Judah, except for one son survives, and you got all these people. So you have this trail of events and this plan of getting this one son of Jacob to survive throughout all that, so that the kings would sit upon the throne, and then ultimately the one true king, the ultimate king, the King of Kings, would sit on the throne with David and the son of David. You have that whole ordering, that whole plan to play out. Think of all the times that the line could have ended. Jesus did come, and all those events culminated really in his resurrection. That's what it was all about. But from there, a new event in which all events would be gathered, right? And the resurrection is where everything that comes after is pointing back to. So all that is like, it's spreading out like a spray from this one event. But all it really culminates in that one event of the resurrection. But then it's also going to come back together again in the one point at the great wedding supper of the Son, where a person from every language, every tribe, every people group will be there. So you have all these people coming back together. And people don't realize that their individual lives are all a part of how God is going to get all these people, his people, there. This is the amazing mind of God. He's got it all worked out so that all these people are going to come. All those people will be there with him forever. And all the events of history are all ordered so that would take place. Pretty amazing. So when you're tempted to despair, like being falsely accused and arrested like Joseph, have hope. It seems as if he always had that hope, that God was always still there, that these things are going to happen, God's got to do it. And in the end, he, even not too long after a lot of these events happen, when he's talking to his brothers towards the end of this story in Genesis, and he's telling them, you intended it for evil, but God intended it for good. He sees through the eyes of God why these things happen to him. He doesn't hold God against, doesn't hold things against God. He doesn't judge God. He doesn't curse God. He says God had planned this all to save you, brothers, and your families, and a lot of other people too. That's why it all happened. So when you think about all hope is leaving you, if you're losing your hope that things can change, that things can get better, that things will be different, remember that your life is part of a greater plan than just your individual life. The suffering, the trial that you might be going through, the emotional stress, just the situation that you're in that you don't want to be in, that you hate, may be what God is using for something far greater than you can even imagine. And that should bring us some hope and encouragement. Remember the example of our brother Joseph here, who was faithful to God in all of life's circumstances. Right? He was faithful even though things changed dramatically. Things got really bad for a while, right? And then they would get good again. And then they got bad. And then they got good. And then bad and good. And just going up and down in this roller coaster. He was constant throughout the stories. He was always pointing to God. God has to do this. God will do this. And that's where we need to be too. We are called to be obedient and follow him and trust him that he has already planned how all this will work out. And he's planned, as Romans tells us, he's planned so that it'll work out for our good. For our good. Right? The good of the church, for the good of his people. That's how he's ordered all these things. So when you think about it, the trials, the bad things you're going through, whether it's like physical suffering, you got different physical issues, that is for your good and the good of the church. God's people. Who knows how he'll use it? We have no idea. We have no idea how he'll use the things. We might not even see it. Joseph was able to see it. And maybe a lot of us will. But it's not a guarantee. So we might not even see how God uses the bad things in our lives. The trials, the stressors, just the things that just drive us insane. We don't know how He'll use those things. Or how He uses other people in our lives to do things. We saw that with this story. I mean, He's going to use Pharaoh. He used Potiphar. He used Potiphar's wife. He used Joseph's brothers to bring all this about. To bring about the saving of lives. But He used the murderous rage of the brothers to bring this about too. And so you see the sinfulness. God uses the sinfulness too to bring about the good. He uses the sinfulness of others to bring about good for other people. He heals the sins of the people to bring about good in their own lives, which is, that's mercy right there. That is grace. That is definitely not deserved. When you're sinning and God uses that to bless you, which He can and which He does, that is mercy. That is grace. That's all glory to God. So that's the end of our study for this week from Genesis 41. Next week we'll be looking at the rest of Genesis 41, see how the story plays out. What will Pharaoh do? What would Pharaoh do? So we'll see what he does and see what happens to Joseph, see what happens to the people in the years of famine going on here. And then after that, then we'll bring the brothers back in and see what happens in that part of the story. So come back next time. We'll look at the end of chapter 41.